Today I'm going to install new rotors and new pads on this 2003 Honda Accord. For this job you only need a handful of tools. I'm using a 19 and 17 millimeter wrench. I'm using my ratchet with a 17 and a 14 millimeter socket. I'm using an impact driver. This is to remove the two screws that are holding the rotor to the hub. Also, this pushes the piston back in on the caliper. You can buy these at the hardware store. I always use mine with a set of washers because it makes it a lot easier. It seems like the depth isn't long enough to fit inside of the piston. And then just using my hammer also. For starting this, go ahead and remove the cap on the top of the brake master cylinder and just let it sit there. You want to be able to have the fluid be pushed back up into the cylinder when you start compressing the piston on the caliper. What I like to do first is get off these two screws. This is where you use your impact driver. The next step, we want to remove the caliper from the actual bracket. There's two 14 millimeter. You have one on the top. You have the second one on the bottom. Go ahead and bust those loose. Now if they start spinning with this nut here, this is where you use the 19 millimeter wrench on here to hold that in place while you remove the bolt. After you have those off, you can separate the caliper from the bracket. And to avoid putting stress on the brake line, I like to lay it right here on top. Just wedge it in there. There's no stress on the brake line. That way I can work on removing the bracket and then the rotor. Now your pads are stuck here. Just go ahead and pull those out. The other one slides out also. You can see this one was getting really low. The front pad, the outside pad had a little more life, but this car was getting a lot of, the rotors were warped. I could tell when coming to the stop. You could feel it on the brake pedal. It was pulsating. Next, remove, there's a 17 millimeter bolt there. There's a second one right here. This will allow us to remove the rest of the caliper bracket. Now your rotor's ready to come off, but sometimes it's stuck on there just from the corrosion and rust that builds up along the inside of the hub. Use your hammer. Now we're going to work on getting this caliper pressed back in. What I like to do when I let it sit, I know it's not to put any stress on the brake line, but I'm going to let it sit there for one moment. There we go. I'm going to feed in my two washers. There we go. Get the piston pushed all the way back in. See how we're leaking over here? It's because I already did the passenger side and it pushed up on the brake fluid level. So after we get the car set back on the ground and get the brakes actually pushed back out the pistons. We're gonna add some more fluid here and make sure it is topped off again. Let's go ahead and remove. Get your washers out. Give that a little break on top. Go ahead and get your new rotor put on. Next, we'll get the caliper bracket back on. Let's get the brake pads put in. And next, let's get the caliper put back on. Now go ahead and tighten those. I'm gonna have to use the wrench and the ratchet. There you go. Pretty simple install on doing your pads and rotors. Go ahead and reattach your brake master cylinder cap, and then go ahead and take the car for a drive. Your brakes probably came with a specific set of instructions on how to break in the new pads and rotors. I recommend following that. It always does seem to make a difference in terms of extending the life and the wear of the pads and rotors. Thanks for watching, guys. If you need any help, let me know. Appreciate it.